Welcome to this webinar on building your interviewing skills. My name is Tom Desch, and I'm a Senior Associate at Associates for Professional Development. We're a team with a passion for helping others through various types of change. We've all experienced career transitions ourselves, and we understand how difficult it can be. We also recognize that it can be a positive and exciting time when you begin to see new opportunities open. Our highly customized approach focuses on your success in making your next career move. We use all the advantages that technology has to offer with our clients in the most efficient, effective ways possible. We've helped individuals at all levels, from hourly and salaried workers to senior level executives. The purpose of this webinar is to provide you with a deeper dive into a section of the information that we offer in our Career Strategy Manual, a resource that can assist you in every phase of your career transition. The information on interviewing is on pages 144 through 158. Interviewing has to be one of the most stressful activities in a job search. I realize that there are probably some of you who are saying to yourselves, "Not for me. I love to interview for a job." Well, maybe only a few of you, but most of us worry about interviewing. It definitely feels like being under a microscope, and some of the questions that interviewers ask can be daunting or even kind of silly. Also, some of us are uncomfortable talking about ourselves. We aren't sure when answering the question with confidence ends and bragging begins. We can help you with finding that balance. This webinar is filled with lots of tips and hints, and we have plenty of information in our manual. Finally, getting that appointment for an interview can be so exciting, but can also be nerve-wracking. The key to reducing your stress going into an interview is preparation. There are three basic parts of getting ready for an interview. The first step is to research all you can about the company. This pays off in so many ways in the interview. Learn all that you can about products, profitability, and, although it's harder to discover, all that you can about the culture of the company. Is it a no-nonsense, just the facts ma'am kind of place? Or is it like a family? And what kind of culture or environment do you thrive in? The second step is networking. I bet you thought that networking was finished when you landed the interview. Well, truthfully, networking is our answer to practically everything. Gathering information from people you know, your friends and business acquaintances, is your single most important career path strategy. If you don't have direct knowledge or contact with those who are close to this position, find out who you know that does know someone there. Learn everything you can from people who will talk about their own experiences. Maybe you can find out if this is a new position. Are you replacing someone who left the organization or who was promoted? Those are all good things to know. If it is a new position, you will have opportunities to define the standards and create the road forward. Is that interesting to you, or do you prefer to run on a well-defined and proven path? If your predecessor left the position, why did they leave? Maybe this job is a gateway to promotions. Maybe they left the company. Maybe they moved out of town. All of this is valuable information. Finally, practice, practice, practice. This is crucial. Each time you go to an interview, get a family member or friend to practice with you. Or if you don't have time to get with someone, stand in front of the mirror and practice by yourself. If you've been given a copy of the job description, here's a great way to prepare for your interview. Put each criteria on the job description in a column down the left side of a page. On the right side, write how you will fulfill each of these requirements. Let's look at the example. The requirement is for 1 to 2 years of experience. Our job searcher has 5 years. Next, the company asks for specific installation experience, and our job searcher certainly has that as well. Since he is preparing for this interview, he might add the specifics of his experience into his answers to the questions the interviewer asks. We don't know for sure that questions will be asked about every detail of the job description, but it is fair to assume that many of the requirements will be discussed. Remember when you were in school, you used to ask your teachers what information a test would include? You wanted to be able to focus your study on the important information. Well, this is a good place to focus your initial preparation for your interview. If you've listened to the AFPD webinars on writing your resume, you know all about accomplishment statements or STAR statements. You will want to use the statements that you wrote as responses in your interviews. Remember, an accomplishment is a very short story about the value that you bring to your work. It tells a problem, how you solved it, and the resulting value that you produced. That's valuable information to talk about in an interview. Accomplishment statements work well to help you analyze a job description, and they work especially well for describing specific experiences that speak to the requirements of the job you are interviewing for. Listen to the webinars on resume writing if you aren't familiar with what I'm talking about, and review them as often as you like. You don't necessarily have to type up all of your preparation before you present it to others in an interview. But I've known job candidates who did prepare this analysis and were able to hand it off to the HR person or leader of a department. More importantly, this exercise is designed to help you remain focused on how you fit in and how you qualify for the job for which you are applying. Some people are comfortable winging it, going into situations with very little preparation and speaking extemporaneously. If you're one of those people, congratulations, that's great. But we found that in the case of interviewing, spending some time thinking through what you might say and even writing it down helps even those who have the gift of gab. It keeps you focused and concise and generally leads to a much more effective interview experience. Do you know what type of interview you'll be having? Will you be speaking to only one person? Do you know their role as a leader, potential peer, or customer? It could be a panel or group that you'll be speaking with. What types of questions do you anticipate? What's the purpose of the interview? Sometimes we're interviewed for information about our experience and ability to do a job, and others for how well we fit with a group. Often, both experience and fit are equally important. With all your interview preparation, don't forget to confirm the logistics. Make sure you're clear about all of the details of time and place. It's always good to be a little early because it's nice to have a few minutes to relax and catch your breath. Have copies of your accomplishments-based resume with you and have a pen and notepad to take notes on. It's also helpful to have several questions prepared to ask later in the interview. An important part of your interview preparation is practicing sample interview questions. Anyone who has gone through the interviewing process has had the experience of being asked a question and feeling stumped, wondering what the best answer to the question is. There's some questions that are pretty standard and get asked a lot. There are other questions that are notoriously hard. If you prepare well, you can manage these, but if you skimp on the practice time, you risk coming up blank, or worse yet, saying the wrong thing. Here are some of those hard questions. I'll go over some of these questions in a few minutes, but first, I want to give you a little hint about interview questions in general. Every interview question has a reason behind it. Obviously, the interviewer wants to learn certain things about the job candidate, but every interview question is asked because the interviewer thinks the response will help him or her learn the answers to the following three questions. Can you do the job? Will you do the job? Will you fit in? So when you hear a question, one way to think about how to answer it is to categorize the question in your mind. Is this question to find out if I can do this job? If so, answer it with a competency or skill, or maybe an accomplishment that illustrates your skill. If this question, let's start that over again. If this question seems to be about finding out if I will do the job, do I seem to want to, let's start that over again. If this question seems to be about finding out if I will do the job, do I seem to want the job? Will I show up, do the work, and be dependable? In that case, you might respond with information about your work ethic and your sense of responsibility. And finally, will I fit in? Will you fit into the team and work well with the customers and your colleagues? In that case, give an example that shows how you go about fitting into the culture of a team. Here's another quick tip to help you out in one of these moments when your mind goes blank. Take a deep breath and say, that's a good question. Let me think a minute. Then breathe again, and after a pause, give your answer. If after that you're still stuck, take another breath and say, I'm coming up blank. Can I get back to you on that? Later in the interview, another question may trigger an answer. Or, worst case scenario, you can add the answer to your thank you note. Work hard to prepare to keep those moments to a minimum. One of the questions that is one of the hardest to answer is, tell me a little bit about yourself. Almost every interviewer starts the meeting with a question like that. Even if the interviewer knows you, you might still be asked this question. For many of us, it's a really hard one because it's hard to talk about ourselves or we don't know where to begin or how much to say. If you don't give enough information, you feel like you aren't being thorough or that you might miss your chance. But remember that we now live in a world of sound bites and tweets. No one listens for very long anymore. So if you give too much information, eyes will glaze over and minds will wander. Really, no kidding. Do your best to keep your answer around a minute in length. Shorter is better. We have this little formula that we recommend. First, I'll demonstrate it for you, and then we'll go over each part of it. I was born and raised in Coldwater, Ohio, a small town in the western part where it is all flat farming country. I moved to Winston-Salem when I was a young adult and have remained here ever since. I have a bachelor's degree from the University of Notre Dame and a master's degree in counseling from the University of Dayton. Currently, I'm a senior partner at Associates for Professional Development. We have been in business for 14 years and we specialize in career transition, organizational development, and career and team development. Prior to this business, I owned my own company that specialized in leadership development and training. And before that, I was an adolescent and family counselor in private practice. I started my work career as a teacher, counselor, and coach at high schools in Ohio and North Carolina. From all of these experiences, I have gained expertise in executive coaching, managing client relationships, creating and implementing programs and projects, and running a business. Today, I am very interested in your desire to create a coaching division in your firm. When I timed this earlier, I was right at a minute in length. Do you see how I used the pattern? Not much background, but a little is nice. Nothing about marital status or children. My education and credentials, and then my experience. You can do this as I did and start with the most recent, or you can start at the beginning of your career. You can decide based on which feels more natural and works best for you. If you graduated from school and started a job in your field immediately with a career progression that is logical and relevant, chronological may flow the best for you. But remember, don't get too detailed, or you'll talk too long. In my case, no one cares that my first job was in teaching. My credentials in this field came later, and very little of my early experience is relevant. The key phrase in your experience paragraph is this: from these experiences, I have skills or expertise in. When you're working on this for a specific interview, go back to the job description and pick out 3 or 4 skills that you have that they have asked for and mention them. The last part of your answer is today. That's just a transition sentence to offer the floor back to your interviewer. Write out your beat statement, memorize it, and then customize it as needed. Another hard question is the dreaded strengths and weaknesses question. There's lots of advice on the internet about this question, but now I'm going to add my 2 cents worth. Please don't make up a weakness. Interviewers can spot a made-up answer a mile away. Do a little soul searching and think about what you consider your weaknesses. Don't choose a weakness that's a core competency. Remember I mentioned a few minutes ago that I started out in teaching? Well, if I were interviewing for a teaching job, I would not mention that most of the time I like children, but sometimes I just can't stand them. No, I wouldn't talk about that. And neither should you if that's your situation. Really, we all have weaknesses that aren't fatal flaws. Choose one of those and then talk about how you've worked with it and how you overcame it. So if I were asked this question, I would probably answer like this. Well, public speaking is my least favorite task. I do a lot of it and it exhausts me. I'm actually a pretty good speaker once I get started, but it usually finds its way to the bottom of my want-to-do list. Then I stress and worry about it. Once I get started, I'm fine, but it takes a lot of discipline and mental stamina. As I've gotten further along in my career, I've learned several tricks that make it easier, and I manage it pretty well, but it's never as easy or as much fun as other tasks. Honest, straightforward, and to the point. And it ends with what I'm doing to make this better for myself. Try it and see how it works for you. And remember, only tell one weakness. So what about strengths? Well, it's okay to talk about a couple of strengths. It's a good idea if they come from that job description that I keep referring back to. So just like no one cares about my early teaching career, and no one cares that I'm good at tennis or that I can throw a great party, but they might want to know that I'm a good project manager, which is why I can throw a good party. You might have experienced behavior-based interviewing because a great many leaders use it. It's a great way to learn quite a bit about a job candidate. The idea behind this type of interview question is that it's likely you will handle situations in the future much like you have handled them in the past. Suppose someone was asked this: tell me about a hard decision that you faced and how you handled it. And they answered, I was 1 year away from finishing my bachelor's degree at a Midwestern university, and my mother was diagnosed with cancer. I wanted to take care of her, but that meant moving across the country and abandoning my education. I researched my educational options, and I researched the treatment options for my mom. I found that I could take 2 courses immediately that needed to be completed in person, but then I could opt for online courses for the rest of my coursework. Mom was able to begin her treatment with some procedures that were typically not horribly debilitating, so I was able to stay in school and be back in North Carolina before Mom needed me. Think about all that you learned about this person and their decision-making process from this story. As an interviewer, you can then decide that their decision-making process is or isn't a good fit for your department. Preparation is the key to responding well to behavior-based questions. And yes, I realize that you can't possibly prepare for every possible question like this. But you can prepare for a range of questions and have a variety of good experiences prepared and ready to pull out so that you can refer to them when one of these questions is asked. Your best responses will not be cookie cutter. They will be true answers that you feel comfortable with, but they will be well practiced and thought through. You'll do better because you were prepared. Okay, this won't happen very often, but what if an interviewer throws you a real curveball? This does happen from time to time, and rather than being totally speechless, go back to our 3 basic interview questions to decide what they're getting at. Remember the 3 questions? Can you do the job? Will you do the job? Will you fit in? So if they asked, what kind of car would you be? This could be a fit question. If you're applying for a job in a department that's known for being very busy and chaotic, maybe you want to be a fast, nimble car that gets great gas mileage. Or if you're applying for a position in marketing, maybe you want to be the latest model of a really popular car. Or if you're interviewing for a job in compliance at a healthcare company, maybe you want to be a tried and true, safe, dependable car. Do you see the process? Often, as you get toward the end of an interview, the interviewer will ask you if you have any questions. I have listed 3 here, and that last one is very valuable. When you ask an interviewer, what are the next steps in the process? They will usually tell you things like, "We will finish interviewing next week," or "We'll make our decision by the first of the month." If you know some of their plans, you can then decide when a follow-up phone call is a good idea. For instance, it isn't a good idea to call and check within a week if you know they aren't making a decision for 2 weeks, but you might check in to see if they need anything else from you in 3 weeks. For additional good questions to ask, check out page 155 in the manual. After you've completed your interview, be sure to send a thank you note to everyone who was involved in the interview. Yes, everyone. You can send a handwritten note or an email, but make each note personal. The manual has information about thank you notes and job search evaluations to help you with this. And this is my final suggestion. When you are nervous, it's easy to ramble on and on. This is deadly in an interview. Learn to answer the question, then stop. Hush. Wait for the next question. If they want to hear more, they will say so. Thank you for being part of this webinar. There's a ton of information about interviewing in our Career Strategy Manual starting on page 144. And remember, practice, practice, practice.